Well, hello, everyone. It's Michelle Gardner-Ince here, aka GI. I have never been without a military ID card, but most of all, you know me as a passionate advocate and champion for women, veteran, and minority-owned businesses. Let me see. Can you all hear me? Oh, good. I'm glad that you can hear me. Welcome to tonight's session. Please put your name and company in the chat so that, you never know. There may be somebody in the audience or somebody that watches this later that will say, oh my God, where have they been all my life? I've been looking for that company. So please introduce yourself. Please connect with other people that are in the session, as well as our special expert guest panelists tonight. But before that, we got to get all of the, guess what, administrative remarks out of the way. So first of all, demystifying government contracting. If you've not been here before, it's all about demystifying, bringing clarity and context to this thing we call government and federal contracting. So this started in this is 2021. I was named the LinkedIn top voice or influencer, and part of that came with the ability to test the LinkedIn audio feature. And I said, well, if I'm going to have that honor, I want to use it to build community, to build connection, to help celebrate businesses, and also to do some coaching and helping. And so that's really what we're all about here on Demystifying Government Contracting. We're here about helping each other connect, celebrate, to be coached, and also to collaborate. So if you haven't, connect with folks. Don't just put down, your name. If you are, I see some people are putting down their um, organization. That's fine, no worries. But really would like for you, especially for the businesses, to put down your NAICS code or your capability in the chat. So first of all, we have Francis, looks like, joining us. Thank you. We have Ahmad. Thank you. We've got Joanna. Thank you. And we also have another LinkedIn user. I must not be connected to you because your name is not showing up, but that's okay. We're glad that you joined us. So, just want to make sure that while we believe we have a 360-degree view on government contracting, we do want to let you know that it's important for you to know that, let me take this off here, that everything that you hear is not the opinion of the Department of Veteran Affairs or any other federal agency. We ask that you seek advice from qualified professionals in these areas when making decisions. Not that the people on this stage are extremely qualified. There's probably more than 100, almost 200 years of experience on the stage, but we want to make sure that whatever advice you're hearing from us, you apply it in a way that's specifically beneficial to your business or your situation. And that's why we ask you to reach out to lawyers, tax folks, and accountants. And the opinions and the views expressed here by the guest and myself are our own, and evaluate any information that you hear. So now that we have that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. We have two new guests here. You've heard Chanel. I'm first. Ladies go first. You've heard Chanel Glover. She is a tremendous advocate and accomplished small business expert, advisor, BD professional, especially to tech companies. She's had tremendous experience inside the government as well as on outside the government as a contractor, now owner of her own business. She does a lot of work with the Chamber of Commerce in the LA area. Now she's going to be doing more of that in the DMV or the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. I appreciate you, Chanel, and I'm so glad that you're here. And thank you for your generosity and commitment to our small business community.
Thank you for having me.
Next, we have Mr. Tyrone Lassiter. Anybody who has dealt with the Office of Small Business Development Utilization at the VA knows Mr. Tyrone Lassiter. Why? Can you believe he started his federal career there and finished it 40 years later with his tireless commitment to small business? So you want to talk to somebody who knows the VA, knows where we've been, knows where we are, and has a very good idea about where we're going. Mr. Tyrone Lassiter, he's not a veteran, but you would think his commitment to veterans and their veteran businesses and their success, that he is a veteran. Many times, even to this day, people will ask me about him, and I tell him he's out there still making a difference, and I'm so glad that you're here, Tyrone.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm glad to be here. Look forward to the discussion.
Awesome. And I see we got before I go to David, we got Miss Lori in the audience. Thank you so much for joining. Lori Smith, who is also one of our panel experts there on the LinkedIn side. She is a retired Air Force contracting officer, also retired from the Department of Veteran Affairs as a contracting officer, senior contracting officer in charge of community care. And if you don't know what that is, that's the contract that allows veterans to receive care wherever they are. In addition to that, if you've ever been to Fort Belvoir and you see that huge hospital there right near the gate, she was the contracting officer that ensured that went off without a hitch. But guess what the other secret is? She was able to add to the wealth of numerous small businesses on that project. Lori, so glad to see you. Thank you, my sister in service, for joining us and being out there on the chat. Yes, Air Force does lead the way. And guess what? What a great segue. We have David Wilson, retired Air Force colonel. I have known him, I want to say how long, but it's been 20 plus years. He was a standout when I was at Hanscom as an acquisition program manager. He also is an accomplished contracting officer. And if you don't know anything about making colonel, let me just say, I know all the rave is about the generals, no shade there, but let me tell you who makes sure that things get done operationally and strategically. It is an Air Force colonel, and just by his rank, he's had a warrant. What was your biggest warrant, David?
I'm sorry, say that one more time. I missed the last part. What was the biggest one?
What was your largest warrant while you were in the Air Force?
Unlimited.
Oh, look at that. Unlimited warrant. That means if the Air Force needed to buy 5 million, 10 million, he was able to do that. I want to thank you for joining us. Can I also say that post-military, post-Air Force, he also was the chief procurement officer for the city of Atlanta. So he has not only federal Air Force time, he has civilian time in as a contracting professional, as a government civilian, as well as at the city government and state level. So welcome, David. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you. I appreciate the invite, and thank you for such a wonderful intro.
You're welcome. Blessing. So proud of you, brother. Wow. Now I see also in the audience, we have Coach Sean Austin, who also has decided to stay on the LinkedIn side. Oh, you on both sides. I didn't even see you. Come on to the stage, Coach. Awesome. Coach Sean Austin, CEO of oh my God, I just had a brain fart. Bank Ready, Austin Business Solutions. So please forgive me, but I always remember him for Bank Ready. It is a trademark name, and guess what? More than that, Bank Ready is the bridge that gets you to being bank ready as a business, not only financially, but also with certifications, also getting your back office systems ready, because many people want to get a government contract, but you got to be able to receive payments. You got to be able to be ready for an audit. And you also have to be you have to be ready to hire and have all your automation and accounting together. And Coach, thanks for joining us. He's a tremendous force down there in the Houston area. So if y'all aren't connected to Coach, you need to be, because he knows everybody that's anybody down there in the Houston, Texas area. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Did I get Austin Business Systems right? Service Solutions?
Well, we actually have 4 brands, so you actually hit both of them: Austin Business Solutions, Strategies, and Systems. So you're correct. I was
Okay.
even wondering, how did you know about the systems? I never brought it up before.
You just giving me grace. You just giving me grace. Look, that's all. And you know I appreciate that, brother. We're in for a great session tonight, because part of what I want to talk about is this whole thing of government vendor communication. I titled this, this session. Oops, hold on. We got to, man, let me tell you, we have a full house tonight. Thank you for joining us, JD. We also have James. I don't know where you are, Lori. I don't know why you're over there, because everybody over here, but we're glad you're there because we do need you. We have Colonel Retired James JD Davis, acquisition executive with the federal government, tremendous leader and individual, also has had unlimited warrants, also has had an accomplished career in the Air Force. I've known both he and David since they were youngins, and they both grew up to be Air Force retired colonels in the acquisitions career field. And he now has done, the thing I also wanted to say, and I'm sure is the case with David, they have done operational contracting. So it's one thing to do contracting in times of peace, but it's a whole nother thing to do contracting in times of war. And so I want to thank you for joining us, JD. Really appreciate you. Glad you could make it.
So honored to be here, GI.
Awesome. So we're about to get started talking about this government and vendor communication. And what I want to do, we're going to talk about 3 main points. But what I'd like to do is to get each of your opinion on each of the points before we move to the next one. How does that sound?
Sounds
That sound okay?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So, the first point that we're talking about is, and first I want to kind of bring context before we dive into the points, that why do you think, and I want the folks in the chat to put, why do you think it is so hard for people to talk to the government, to communicate with the government? What are the barriers to that? Put that in the chat, if you will. Tell us, what are the barriers to you communicating with the government? It's almost like, to me, the government clients are saying, we're looking for good vendors, and the vendors are saying, we're looking for good clients, but they're bypassing each other. And a lot of times the topics that I pick from these come from an exchange or an engagement I've had with someone. or with a vendor. But I would like to know, what do you think the challenges are, in the barriers are to talking with the government? I want the folks in the chat to put that. The question I have for those of you here on the stage, our amazing human beings who've joined us as experts, what do you think is the challenge with government communicating with vendors? You can just pipe up and unmute. Whoever wants to go first.
I can, if you like, maybe
Go
from the
ahead.
civilian business strategy side of it, just from what I see with clients that we deal with, because they want to talk to government. And I mean, I've dealt with both sides, so I understand the government language. I understand the private sector language. Just left the Port Houston, a large government event there, right? So I think the biggest issue that I'm trying to translate the government language to the civilian language and letting the civilian companies know, hey, they do want you, they need you. And I think the biggest issue for small businesses is that they've got to be really humble, super humble, and understand that they've got to speak government, not government speak civilian.
Say it again.
And yeah, I mean, it's true. And I'm not saying just because I'm in the room with GI and other government, but the one that's got the big pen in the checkbook is who you really have to satisfy. So my goal is being a bridge, so as a strategy firm of, hey, this is the Mandarin Chinese that I need you to start learning to speak. And the more comfortable government is with you, what I'm finding, they like people. They want to deal with people, but you have to learn this person's systems. And I think that's a big hurdle because they're trying to get to government. It's hard to get them in the room. Once they're there, understand there's still people like you guys. And we all go to, do people things. I think the big hurdle is just understand that there is a language and respect and really a level of just a monicum of decorum you have to have dealing with government, because those policies don't change for anybody. They don't change for themselves. They're staunch to it and following the FAR to a T. But he really asking, how can I work with you? How can I, what is this? What makes it click? That's the issue of, and if we can get more small business to do that, it'll open up a lot of doors for us.
True. Anybody else? David,
Yeah,
jump in, or JD.
yeah, G, I was going to just kind of echo that. I think some of the barriers with the government is, one, the fear of violating the procurement integrity, where they're being unfair, talking to one company and not giving the other company the same opportunities. And unfortunately, I think the fear is, how far can you go? And a lot of inexperienced government personnel, they don't know where to draw the line, so they rather not even engage at all. And then there's always the timing. You can engage early on before the solicitation is all out there, and you're trying to, advertise and bring someone in. But then as you start going through and getting proposals, you have to start narrowing those conversations down to where there is no exchange. And some of our government folks don't really know where to draw that line. And I just think it's inexperience. So therefore, they rather not engage than to get engaged and maybe have a protest or have to, go and resolve an issue.
Let me
And I
piggyback
was going
on
to,
that.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tyrone, and then jump on in, David.
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest thing is government has to act governmental, and the contractors coming to do business with the government has to have a government mindset. So, these rules and regulations are written for a reason. That contracting officer, that program activity, they can't go outside of those rules. So the more you know about the rules and that you're able to think like a contracting officer and a law that guides these regulations, then the better off you are.
True. I'm going to address some of the questions in the chat, comments in the chat. Go ahead and put them in there. David, you want to chime in?
Yes, I was going to say, JD, you took the words out of my mouth. Part of that challenge is understanding the lines and not crossing them. But I would say, additionally, knowing who the appropriate person is to contact. On the government side, us going out looking for vendors, there are a multitude of ways to go find them. But also, as we utilize those systems, dozens of contractors come up. And so it becomes a bit more of a cumbersome task for us to reach out without going through our technical systems or our processes and procedures. And so the ways that we have tried that I've seen that we typically use, those industry days are critical. Industry days are where we're actually able to interact with you directly, face to face. And I don't think we do enough of that. We rely on our systems, rely on our processes, our RFIs, et cetera, and we don't engage with the community enough to have those conversations, to have that people-to-people interaction. And I think that's a limitation or a barrier to developing those connectivity points between the commercial market and the community as far as the program manager and the contracting officer. From the corporate perspective, oftentimes contracting officers, we're going to receive your email with your marketing package, and the timing is traditionally off. It just comes in randomly, and if we're not looking for that at that time, it becomes something that gets filed in a folder. You may not remember to even go back and look at it. So timing is critical. If there is a way to interact with that person or the people to engage in that connectivity, I think that builds that relationship. And so finding that and participating in industry days is critical and key to that, because traditionally the government's going to tell you what their requirements are for that period of time, or trying to establish a meeting, have a discussion with that program manager or contracting officer to have that conversation or discussion. And so those relationships are key. And oftentimes going through your small business office helps out with that greatly. Over.
Awesome. Hey, Lori, I see you here. Welcome, lady. You want to chime in? It was too good over here, wasn't it?
It actually was, and I'm still y'all princess in training, and I was also doing my HEPS mission and lost some skills there, but yeah, I'm here. What I would like to add as well is that the regulation actually has sort of like been adjusted a bit to facilitate engagement. However, internal to the government, you still have a lack of trust amongst contracting professionals with people that work with them, whether it be the program office, their supervisors and management. And those also create barriers. And so I think we have to be mindful of the culture of the offices that you are trying to engage in and what is going on. So it goes to the point, understanding the government speak, understanding the nature of what is happening, and being mindful of that as well. However, if there are a lot of CSs and a lot of junior and subordinate people, as well as COs that would potentially like to engage industry a bit more, but to the point where, hey, I'm not sure how much I can say, is really as a result of, I'm up here trying to do the right thing, and I get this memo that say engage and lean forward. However, that's not what my leadership really want me to do. So it's like a double-edged sword. So a lot of that also plays into, the relationship and how significant it is to try to, figure it all out. So I know it becomes this heavy burden potentially for vendors to try to figure out which side of the bed 1102s or government professionals, period, get up off of. But all of those things play into it. At the end of the day, all engagement is being conducted with people. And so we have to be mindful of those and all those other nuances as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Awesome. Well, anybody, this is good stuff. This is some gold right here. So let's stick with the theme that Lori has talked about, and then at the end, I want you to be thinking about, when we get to about 8:00, I want you to be thinking about some takeaways. But this is too juicy right here. I want to talk about the culture of the acquisition arena on the government side when it comes to engaging with uh, vendors, and why are they apprehensive? And can you share any stories, um, or situations, of names, you know, excluded, of course, um, that would kind of give the audience a sense of uh, why there's apprehension, or why the culture is the way it is. Who wants to jump in?
I could probably give an example of that.
Go ahead.
Um, Within the Air Force, we have a multitude of different agencies and different structures. And so, for example, if you're looking at the Air Force Life Cycle Logistics uh, Agency, for example, they tend to have your seasoned program managers, seasoned professionals that are have the experience and background to have those conversations and understand where those lines are. When you get to some of your staffing agencies, let's say that support the Pentagon, oftentimes your program manager is not really a program manager. They may be a pilot in A3 or intel officer in A2. And that's not their background. Acquisitions is not their background. And so there's a level of discomfort in having those conversations or getting involved at that level because they're not versed in what that process or procedure looks like. And there is a
Mm,
difference between the agencies. You get to AFSC or the operational side, you're dealing with potentially your engineers and CE, where they'll have some acquisition experience at the operational level, depending on how long they've been in the organization and what they've been doing. And so, depending on where you're reaching out to, or where you're engaging or entering into that government arena, you'll come across people with varying degrees of knowledge and experience within the acquisition process, which can create a level of discomfort or
yes.
lack of understanding.
Yes. So, and this brings a situation to mind. I'm so glad you mentioned it, David, that I remember there was a lady who attended a construction event, industry kind of day we had, and we went into breakout rooms, and there were government folks and vendors in the breakout rooms. And then she met with me later on, one-on-one, and she said, I don't understand uh, why this guy. I kept asking him questions, and he kept saying, I don't know. And I kept asking him, and he got even stronger, saying he didn't know. And I don't understand. He did seem like he didn't want to share it with me. And I said, did you assume that maybe he had the information? And that speaks to finding and knowing who you're talking to. That just because you're talking to somebody from the government does not mean they are the right person. And one of the examples I always use is in VA. And Tyrone, you can jump in here. When we talk about a PDM, that's a person that we know has the authority, or at least oversight of the entire, requirement and acquisition. Tyrone, do you want to jump in there on that?
Yep, in my experience in dealing with both large and small businesses, uh, you have to have your expectations in line with your abilities. And what I mean by that is, back in the 90s, I worked a contract called management studies where we had 5 large businesses and 5 small businesses on a schedule during consulting. And the large businesses, they use the best paper. They put their stamps on, every page, so that you know who they are. It was branded. So part of the technical evaluation process, yeah, I'm contracting officer. I'm going to redact their name from each and every page because I don't want my technical panel to be
Mhm.
swayed by a name. And lo and behold, you do have some technical folks that sit on the government side that aren't very governmental and know and have seen that proposal and have had meetings and lunches with these vendors. And it's the way of the world. It's the way that the process works. and you have to be aware of it, as a small business coming into the government. And if you're a small business specialist, doesn't advise you of, some of the brick walls and obstacles that you're going to run into, and the mindsets and the personalities, then they're not doing their job, because we're acting as a barrier between that small business entity and the industrial military complex that basically rules the government. In my 30, 40 years of working with the VA, that's what I saw. The big guy is gonna get it and throw you the crumbs and the pieces. But there's ability to show folks what you can do. And a lot of those cases where those smalls went up against those larges, the government saved a lot of money by awarding it to a small. And those technical folks weren't swayed because they had no idea who wrote that proposal
That's
until it was awarded by me, the contracting officer.
that's a very good point about how companies are viewed, and the fact that while branding is good, it also can be um, an issue when it comes to redacting. I do want to take some points in the question. Did somebody else want to comment on culture of the organization and of the acquisition professionals? Give an example. I do want. Somebody's talking about. I see Lori's engaging someone about uh, security violations, sharing information, and checks and balances. But I first want to close out this culture point
Yes.
before.
What?
Di-
Go ahead, Chanel.
Go ahead.
Okay. This is from a perspective from audit and compliance with acquisition. So I've been on some projects, and one was all the way up to the congressional level, and it was at one of the larger agencies. Uh, One reason why acquisition professionals should, be careful, and they have to do this in their when they're awarding, is that there are reviews and there's oversight, especially when something occurs. They have to go back. There are teams that go back and they have to review, everything from start to finish. And I've been a part of those teams, and I've also been a technical reviewer. And as it's been stated several times, some people on the government side, they may do things, that, in my opinion, I wouldn't recommend for someone in that role. So others are more careful, and they're more ethical in the process. But one reason they have to do that is because there are penalties for violations, and some are civil and some can be criminal. So, is a lot of responsibility and liability on the acquisition professionals and program staff.
So true. So I want to ask JD and James, um, about, I mean, JD and Tyrone, the folks who are fed. What, and Lori, what do you think? How can vendors? I want to kind of get to the solution. What can vendors do to figure out who they're talking to? Because I find so many vendors are so starry-eyed with titles, and a lot of times they say, "Oh, I got to talk to so and so." I'll give you an example. A lady said to me, "I'm going to meet with so and so from the economic development organization in my state, and she's speaking." I said, "Oh, good." I said, "What are you going to do after that?" She said, "I'm going to go and stand in line to shake her hand." And I said, "Why?" She said, "Well, I want to tell her that she did a good job." Why? And my point on that is, when vendors are engaging with the government or future clients, how do they maximize those few minutes they have to be remembered, and to be impactful, and to try to get a follow-up or a next meeting? You can jump in, any of you.
So, GI, I'll start first. I
Mhm.
think we are looking at these engagements. Is timing is so important, and who you should be engaging with is so important based on where the acquisition is. So let's say if you're looking at the beginning phase of developing a concept, well, that contractor should be hopefully engaging with the people who are writing the requirements and trying to figure things out. That's an exchange there. As they move forward with, let's say, now having an industry day, and really firming up what that requirement could be, that's probably where there's a combination of you talking to the folks who are technical, who are writing requirements, as well as understanding what the procurement contracting officers are going to be doing, because what the procurement folks will do is they'll put it in a language, the requirement in a language, and develop criteria that will be based on what's the common industry practices and things of that nature. So that's a different stage. And then once you get to, I want to call it the third stage, where a solicitation goes out, well, now you're probably going to be talking primarily to the contracting officer, and they may invite the requirements owners with you, but that contracting officer is going to be the gatekeeper of all those exchanges. So there are different stages of who you probably need to focus in and talk to. And I like how the gentleman said earlier, you have to understand how the government operates. And when you learn and you know about the timing, you're golden. You're golden.
May I chime in on that?
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I would like to say, just to expand upon JD's comments, is that they're spot on. A way as a vendor, one of the ways that you can find out to help you with that timing, excuse me, I've got a little cold I'm dealing with, but the way you can help with that timing is utilize FOIA, right? Find out if there's an agency that you're interested in doing business with, and you find that there's a contract that they have that you could potentially support, request a copy of it. Review the contract, review the scope, look at the timing of it based on the claims. If you're able to read that contract and understand who the agency is, who the core is, who the contracting officer is, the program manager, what the scope is, that will help you with defining what that timing is. That's step one. Step two is, for those things that you don't know what questions to ask who. If you're reaching out to the contracting officer, you can reach out to the contracting officer and say, I understand that this contract has been awarded and expires approximately this date and time. Rather than asking what's the strategy for the follow-on, ask, hey son, I'm on the call, son. I'll be over in a minute. Okay. Thank you. Ask what's excuse me, I lost my train of thought. Ask what's the traditional or typical time frame to execute that follow-on. So that way you get an expectation of when they should start planning. And then ask, if it's not in the contract, you can't see it, which it should be, who the agency is or who the people are, or program manager that you may reach out to have that conversation. Those are things that we could share with you just in case that person that's on the contract has changed, because you'll award a contract 5 years, 2 years into it, somebody else is working it. And so know the questions to ask, and prior to asking the questions, get a copy of the contract.
So good. So good. So what are other sources, I'll ask this of the panel, what are other sources that vendors can utilize to gain more insight and information about the organization or the client?
Michelle, this is Lori, if I
Come
may.
on, jump in. Yeah, jump in.
A great resource that people can utilize to gain information about the organization are their strategic plans and or goals.
Yes.
You can also look at the budgets for various agencies as well, because once you review that information, what it's communicating is what's priority to them, and that's where money is going to be going to go. Also, to the point about obtaining information regarding the contract, you can, even if you don't get the copy of the contract, or pay a FOIA fee for them to provide you a copy of the contract, do a Google, not a Google, SAM search, and go unarchive it. You can have that previous requirement history, and so you're going to, in essence, know what the PWS was that was out there, any kind of questions and answers that came up as a result of that requirement when it was originally solicited. But more importantly, specifically, you can also go to the various forecasts for various agencies and download those and know when something is coming on the horizons. The FAR does, acquisition.gov is a resource that everybody has access to. when you are doing research on organizations, you go to their websites, if you get copies of people threshold policies, it's like you start doing desk audit. It becomes the secondary research, and secondary research can serve in those instances where people are not able to go and travel and be a part of all engagements. You can sit there at your desk and find various information about the clients that you should be going to, because I think it's very key for you, one, to sell to who will provide a solution to the problem that you can solve. And so we can't solve everybody's problem, so we shouldn't,
True.
again, be ringing everybody's doorbell.
True.
You can always determine who that is through USAspending.gov. It's going to let you know who's sort of what buying in your NATE. So there's ways you can identify who you should be even engaging with. And then also be mindful that although we are one United States of America and we serve, have the greatest government, in the nation of the world, all government agencies and entities are not created equal. So the way the Air Force sell, it may not be the way the Army and the Navy or VA or another federal agency sell. So you really got to understand their culture. You got to know what their pain points are. And again, strategic plans, GA audits, and any kind of OIG, any kind of IG report about an agency, it's going to point out problems. So that's how you can obtain information as well.
Wonderful. Anybody else want to add? I mean, she
Yeah,
didn't leave much, but if you got some more,
Michelle.
yeah,
Oh yeah, I'm
jump on
sorry.
in and then coach.
Yeah, so I would say the program office, agency, and acquisition web pages. Many times it has organizational information there. Also, with the program, it'll help you identify stakeholders, the program's mission, the strategies, and many times it would also include the next, acquisition details around, like when the next time they will release the bid. And then someone already mentioned sam.gov. You can get a lot from there. The agency financial report is the AFR. It includes the agency's mission for the next 5 years, but one key thing that it includes are the deficiencies and shortfalls. So it
What
tells
is that
you
again? Said the what
the
now?
agency financial report, the AFR,
Okay, okay.
and it includes the
Agency.
financials. Yeah, it includes the financial statements. I've worked on it at several agencies, including the VA. So it includes their financial statements. It's like a report card for the entire agency, but it also has findings that are in the front that go to the president and Congress and
Mhm.
from the CFO's office, and it tells you all the issues, the top priorities for every agency and how they plan to address them. Those are typically things that they have to address with in like a 1 to 2 year period. But if they have some that are 5 years out, they'll include those too. It includes lots of information because they have to review every single department in their agency and give an update.
Wonderful. Y'all are dropping. I don't know if y'all know if y'all are listening. Is this good, y'all? I'm not seeing much in the comments. I see Lori talking, but those of you who are in the audience, is this some good stuff? Are you getting gold? Can you give us some love? Give our panelists some love, would you? Okay, Coach, you want to jump in? I mean, these ladies covered it, but I know there's some more out there.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah. The ladies do a really good job of covering. I even took notes on my own. 'Cause we always, constantly learning, and from the vendor side, and again, as a strategy firm developing vendors, I'm trying to find those inner loops, those small little one-offs to where they can come in and make that eye-to-eye contact. And today
Mm-hmm.
was a really good example about that, being with the Porch Open House. So the more you can be seen, right? I love the digital aspect because it does allow you to do a lot of your market feasibility research, and I'm huge on research. So shout out to Chanel for that data, because that data is exceptional, Chanel. So shout out to you for that. And Dr. Lori, everything that they're saying is so spot on and usable data, day. But one thing I heard one of the program managers with the port say, and I've heard this with Metro, I've heard this with multiple agencies, ask how you can do a lunchless learn. Oftentimes they can't accept lunch, but they will accept appointments and speak to you, obviously not about a specific solicitation, but how to do business with them. And that lunchless learn could be an appointment set. You can meet with program managers, program directors, and see how to work with them. And the guy that's the head of the port, he calls himself an old engineer. He doesn't go with the title. He's like, look, I'm an old engineer. This is how I do. But he said, I do business with not companies. He said, I do business with people.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see you as a person, and I'm gonna give y'all a really good example, and I kind of pat myself on the back for staying consistent with this, but the head of the SBA, Miguel Ruiz, is over procurement for the SBA in our region. And when I walk into a room now, he's like, "Hey, are you talking to him? You need to talk to him." And I'm talking to the head of procurement for the port. Just met him, Rob, great guy. When he heard Miguel mention my name, he's like, "Okay, who is the guy you talking to?" And you can be introduced and open doors by people seeing you consistently, right? And you find out those little nuances that aren't advertised. You can't web search this stuff. And when you can get in front of an older gentleman or a more seasoned professional that's in that space and do those lunches learns, do those one-off appointments and let them see you more often. And one of the things that I love to hear, and y'all should want to hear this too, you're everywhere. Everywhere I go, I see you here. I'm here to see you. So you make those little jokes, but when people say that, they mean that. They see you everywhere. And now the question is, they'll ask you, how can I help you? What are you really trying to do? Okay, what is it again? Well, we do NIGP codes, we do NAICS codes, we do this, we do that. And they give you more of the rules of engagement on a one-off basis, eyeball to eyeball, and you make those appointments immediately so you don't lose traction. And that with a lot of the technical assistance advice you've heard here today, but those little things help tremendously. And now you can do business with another person who remembers you as a person, and you want to always ask, and I'll end here, how can my business help what your mission is? Here's what we do, here's what you do, and you've already researched their mission and vision, and you align yours with it, but you still want to ask because you want to be humble enough to ask, and they'll tell you. And then that conversation can take you guys so far. And small business owners out here, quit trying to rush the process. It's a process for a reason. Let it take a year and a half to get to that point. It's okay because once you're there, you're seasoned and you're there, and they can tell that you're humble to that point. So think about that would be my point.
No, that's I mean, you guys are dropping gold, and I hope everybody in the audience knows how valuable this information is. And oh, by the way, we'll be back next week, same topic, a little different focus, talking more about when you do meet with the government client. What are some of the things they're concerned about? What are some of the things you're concerned about? And you said it right. You can't read this in a book. It's experience. There's no checklist. If I told you how many times veterans ask me, where's the checklist? Well, the checklist is on the SBA.gov website. Get your EIN, decide on your type of business, LLC, S Corp, C Corp, all these other things, register in SAM. But when that's over, your business plan, your strategy is your checklist. And you could take somebody else's, but they're doing that for their client, for their particular capability, and you have to do yours, right? And people do business with who they know, like, and trust. We hear that all the time, but it's underrated. People think because I'm woman owned, minority owned, veteran owned, hub zone, where's my contract? I can tell you there are thousands of other people who have all those certifications. So the communication is important. Listening is important. Serve and solve. Don't sell. Because the more you know about them and the more you learn about them, then you can tailor your solutions and your capabilities. So I do want to, somebody talked uh, about onboarding is slow. What did they mean by that, Lori? I know you were on the other side then. Let me see here. Somebody was talking about onboarding is slow.
And I
What is
think
that?
what that is in reference to, and I'm making the assumption, once you get government contract and you're trying to get people onboarded into the spaces, it can be slow. So what we all still have to be mindful of is that we are, again, a government entity is who we're doing business with. And so being mindful of what's happening in the world. So when you hear about the security breaches and data being shared and things happening, that's going to trigger, a chain reaction. And so someone is going to go and they're going to look and increase a standard or maybe a little bit more procedural. But then too, the resources are still an issue for the government, even in the background. And that's been topics that's been out there as well. But we can mitigate that if we recruit to fill, or if we recruit, when we're even pursuing contracts, if you're pursuing a contract to win, it don't stop with you in that proposal. Holistically, everything about it should be a solution. So how quickly can you provide my solution? So what is your active relationship with a talent agent? When you're out there doing recruitment, knowing, being mindful you're getting ready to do a government contract, what are you saying and communicating when you're doing hiring and staffing and you're putting the jobs announcement out there? Who won't go out there and download the 86P and look to see what they're going to be looking at for a background investigation? Can you answer all these questions, truthfully? Is there anything here that's going to stop you? And if so, maybe this ain't the job for you. If we prepare, it's all about positioning, posturing, and just preparing for, the win and sustainment, so the success of it is just making sure holistically you can do it from beginning to end. And if you prepare to onboard, it may facilitate the process going quicker. But for some agency, onboarding is going to take a while. We do lose folks. And then too, as vendors, especially in security area, when we see these agencies having these top secret clearance requirements and they really don't need them, hey, call the government out on them and say, hey, do you really need that? Sometimes we don't push back and ask, for the necessity of things. And so, but that's going to delay a requirement. If it's any kind of high level security clearance required, just know that that onboarding process is going to be a while, and you want to recruit with that in mind as well.
Excellent. Anybody else want to jump in? We are at 7:53. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. Share your, this particular video with your LinkedIn network and share what you learned. It's a way for you also to, to build your connections. We appreciate social capital. I tell everybody, nobody here is paid for being here. And so, you're getting more than hundreds of years of experience in an hour. And that is what makes this so special. So share the love, by sharing social capital, sharing this video, also, tagging the people that are on this stage and showing them some love. Somebody said, where can we locate the AFR again?
The AFR, it's going to be on each agency's website. Each agency has their the AFR should be under their financials because it's a financial statement, so it's going to be under their financial information. But each agency
Is there a way
has
for you
it.
to put a link to one of them so they can just
I can put I'll put a link to one of them, but for each unfortunately, unless it has changed in the last couple months, each agency has it listed differently. Unfortunately, it's not standardized.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll go and get one just so you can see what's there.
So they can kind of see what's
Now,
there.
warning: the average size is 200 to 400 pages. So I'll also put a note about where you go and look for the information that's relevant to finding out, the details.
Coach got it. Coach put the state plans.
So the AFR. So I'll put in the notes where you need to go and look for the relevant information.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.
Go ahead. Yes.
If I could just kind of add, so one, doing the homework and trying to understand who your client is, or the group or the organization that you're trying to, if you will, partner with. And I like to think of it as being a partnership. I think one of the ladies said earlier about the culture of the organizations. All of them are different. But like this young lady is talking about the AFR, if you go to any government agency that has the procurement authority, and that's saying that they have contracting officers that can procure to support the organization, they normally have on their website doing business with this agency, and how to do business. And normally gives you kind of a little bit of their rules of engagement, who to contact and things of that nature. They'll also on there talk about often what are some of the upcoming requirements that they're looking at. The strategic plan that the lady mentioned earlier, that will be on there too. So if you do your homework, I call it do the research, do your homework, find out the company or the organization that you want to partner with, find out where they're going, and then that's when you start engaging, because you have headspace of knowing what solutions that they're looking for or what problems they have and what solutions you can provide.
Awesome. Any other words of
I would,
wisdom? Jump in. Go ahead, Tyrell.
yeah, I left the VA last year. And, one of the thought processes, I had a guy that was having a serious issue with VA and got me as a small business specialist. And, I agreed to work with him and coach him and said, hey, I'm going to teach you how to play the game. And he says, well, this is not a game. This is my livelihood. You guys are going to make me go bankrupt. But what I meant by that was, he had to think like a contracting officer. He knew the federal acquisition regulations, and uh, he was, challenging in the contracting officer. And the contracting officer doesn't want to be challenged. He's going to go back and forth with him. So my advice was him to think like a contracting officer, but you have to act like a poker player. And you have to be
That's good.
prepared, to have the proper hand, whether you need an 8A or a service disabled veteran or a woman. Some firms have all of the socioeconomic categories beneath their belt or partnerships with those firms. So you have to be strategic in your processes. You have to go to these organizations and present yourself as a humble civil individual that's not going to give them a lot of trouble, because if they see you having a ton of questions at the beginning, then they're going to say this guy's trouble, and that's a mindset, and it's not everywhere, but you have to think strategically, think like a poker player, put your poker face on. Don't let everyone see your hand and what you're dealing with, and do your homework like everyone else said. And I'll leave you with that. Thanks.
No, that's so good. Uh, you know, this system is run by people. And if I don't like you because you're embarrassing me, you're challenging me in front of other people, it doesn't make them want to give you an opportunity or help you gain more insight. It makes them close up, if you will. And, the reality is, again, you can't make anyone award you a contract or give you an opportunity. And this is something I say to veterans. Just because we have a V in our name does not mean there is a contract with your name on it. And so as a result, you need to build relationships and not expect that you're going to be, nobody's going to give you anything. You're going to win it, right? You're going to be awarded it. And that comes through competition, even if it is competition with other veterans, other women, other minority, and other hub zones. I
Can
do
I add
want
something
to,
on top of that, yeah?
yeah. Go ahead. Mhm.
So, yeah. So one little thing for the small business out there, I hear a lot of folks saying this is just maybe contrary to what you may be thinking. Everyone wants to go after a procurement or, hey, I want to win a contract. I would say, and I've said this, it's been a while, but try to win the hearts and try to win the relationship. Don't worry about the contract. Don't worry about the solicitation. Don't worry about being so transactional. Try to win the relationship of the person that's got influence to make a call to push the envelope. Try to win the relationship of how do you work well with this agency to make sure their missions are going forward. If you win the relationship in the hearts of those you work with, you'll find out who really pushes the envelope and who really signs the checks for these things. And then from that point on, you want them asking you, okay, what is it that you do again? Let's go over this, because they're comfortable with you and they can rely on you, and you are a staple within where they want to see things going. Because just like capital improvement projects and programs with cities are 5, 10, 15 years out, they have their goals that are set 5, 10, 15 years out. So how do you become part of that equation 5, 10, 15 years out? And the relationship and them counting on you is what you want to aim for. That will bring you the contract opportunities.
And builds the trust. That's also what you're saying.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm. And so Tyrone talked about, basically, putting a poker face on, even if you're, you're upset or there's some tense conversations. Keep your head about you. Keep the end goal in mind. And then, Coach came behind him and talked about, the importance of nurturing and growing that and taking your time to grow that relationship. Was anybody else going to jump on? Because we are at 8:01. I would like for us to each give maybe like a 60-second closing remarks, things, tips for vendors to remember. Try to, since we have such a huge panel here, I want to ask you to limit it to 3 things. And then that way we'll have time for everybody to have something to say.
Michelle, I'll do my
Mm-hmm.
closing now, if that's okay.
Please. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, yes. I've been working with many small businesses and even some mid tiers that maybe have not learned how to work with the government, acquisition officials, and program staff. And the first thing they'll do is say, "I'm going to go get my lawyer for everything." Um, Many times people don't know this, but uh, some CPAs and some attorneys, they're not familiar with how to do business with the government, specifically the federal government. So I will recommend that you try to build bridges and compromise and work with your contracts officer, program staff, and not create an enemy type situation. Because unfortunately, I personally know businesses that no longer have a business, or they don't have their contracts portfolio the size that they had because they created tense situations. And I'm not saying that's a pushback, but just be careful, and try to build a relationship instead of destroying, what you have, especially if you have an active portfolio, because then they'll nitpick every little thing about your work. Some agencies, I've seen this happen, but I'm not speaking for everyone. And then another thing, when you're meeting with any government official, know who you're speaking with, what their role is, and try to do research and make your conversation relatable. I've been in meetings when we're doing BD pitches or intros, and I see that many new and small businesses, they struggle with staying on target with the talking points that are relatable for the person they're speaking with. So just make sure you do your homework so that you can have a productive conversation when you do get in a meeting with the government official.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Who else Laura, you want to go? Ladies first. 3 things.
Sure.
60 seconds.
At the end of the day, everyone involved are people. So just be mindful that you are engaging yet another person. And so keep that in mind. Know the culture and know the nature of the organization that you are engaging with. And you be the solution to whatever problem they have. There is no value added just meeting with government agencies that will never need your service. So just be mindful of that, because that will be frustrating for you. And when you go to do pitches to the government, again, it's a problem. And hey, I heard you got this problem and I can solve it. And let me tell you a story about how I've already solved it. Do you want to hear more? More so to just talk about your capabilities, because we don't care about your capabilities. They want to know, can you solve their problems? So just keep that in mind.
So true. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Gentlemen, who wants to go first? Tyrone?
Yeah,
You want to go first?
oh,
Or
Sure,
who?
I'll
JD?
go.
Okay, go ahead,
I'll
Tyrone,
go.
then JD. Mm-hmm.
Well, in my experience, there's so many ways to get involved with government. Specifically the VA, they are human capital magnets, and we're always looking for nurses and doctors and IT guys, and so there's always a need out there, and we're always looking for the biggest and the brightest. So it's who can get that resume, who can sign that key person, who can sign that cybersecurity guy. A lot of times the Booz Allens and the big guys of the world, they put a bigger check on the table. And I recall firms that I worked with back in the 90s, they still have folks in the VA working today as a result of having an expert that they put under contract and was able to keep them happy and pay them the salary that they dictated. And the VA loved this person. And that's the way, it's a people's organization, it's a people's government. So if you can't draw good people and, bring good people into the fold, then, you're fighting a losing battle. But find out who you're dealing with, because personalities and those technical folks, if you bring in someone that they don't like, it's a contractor. They don't have to deal with contract staff that they don't like. So realize, who you're working with, what you're working with, and the history of the programs. SAM.gov, has a ton of information, including pricing. GSAE library has prices. So, look at what you're doing, be astute. And don't come into the government blind, because we'll swallow you up and spit you out and move on to the next vendor.
Oh,
Good
come
night.
on now, Tyrone. True.
I've seen
Hey,
it happen.
JD, we all have.
Yeah. I think there's a current theme that we definitely need to be mindful of all the partnerships. Is there's that culture that's tied to the relationships that is also tied to the strategic plan of the mission of the organization. Understanding the power of those three can take you a long ways, because it's having the right mindset of who you're dealing with, knowing where they're trying to go and what they're trying to do so you can support them. My second item is everything is driven by times. I mean, the government is driven on a timeline. You saw we just did with the government shutdown. It's all based on time. Procurements are based on time. When you can understand where they are in their timelines and where they're anticipating on being and where they have been, you can then plug in and know how to best support them based on what they're trying to get done and how quickly they're trying to get it done. Last but not least, I think Tyrone said this, is primarily, I think you need to seek to understand their problems first before you provide any capabilities. I mean, if you don't quite understand their problem, you're going to waste your time and theirs as well. So make sure you understand what they're trying to do and understand what they have done in the past that may have not been successful. So that's some of the homework you have to do in order to be best postured to engage with the government and have a long relationship with the government.
Awesome. Um, Everybody, I mean, y'all are just dropping gold bricks. So we got Tyrone went, JD went, Dave.
Yes, I will. Everybody's pretty much said it, so I'll summarize it. Do your due diligence. Know what questions to ask. Know your audience. Understand your audience. The agency who you're looking to do business with. Focus on building the relationship and be able to solve the problems.
I'm typing. So do your homework, do your due diligence, do your homework. What was the second one? I mean, the third one you said?
Know what questions to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Understand your audience, basically the agency that you're looking to do business with.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on building that relationship and be the problem solver.
Man, I couldn't have wrapped that up any better myself. What do y'all think? Can y'all give some love to this amazing panel? How many of you have connected with everybody on the stage? Give me a thumbs up if you have connected with David and JD and Tyrone and Lori, Coach, Chanel. Did I miss anybody? And David. Did I say David? JD? I think I said everybody. Yes. Any other last questions or comments? Somebody said, what did you say in the chat? Love this. I know, great information, isn't it? So will you be back next week? I had some technical issues with LinkedIn. It wouldn't let me create an event, so I had to go and use an outside link. But I look forward to us continuing the conversation around vendor and government communication. Thank you for joining Sandra, Lucretia, Tanisha, all of you all who have been so active in the chat. Rossi, I see you, La Pedra, who else? Francis, many more, because if I'm not connected with you, so make sure you connect so that your name will come up on the screen. I want to thank this amazing group of acquisition and small business advocates. Follow them, reach out to them if you think that they might be able to add to your capability, or if they can shorten the route to where you're trying to go. They are very generous, but like I said, everybody here is a business owner, so please respect that. We've been doing this almost, January will be almost 2 years. There's some folks who still are trying to get everything free, and the route to the, I would say the fast route is normally not free. So, if you want to come back, keep coming back, getting nuggets, that's fine. But please respect the time, celebrate these individuals for being so generous. And should you need their services, be respectful of that too. I do want to say that there's a bunch of free resources, SBA.gov, Apex accelerators, the Small Business Development Centers, the Veteran Business Outreach Centers, the internet, right? There's no shortage of information, but what's unique about Demystifying Government Contract sessions weekly is that you're going to get context, you're going to get expert and insider perspectives on public information. So I'm going to end like I always end. I want to say first, thank you to the panelists again for joining. And to all, I want to say, may God bless you, bless you, bless you indeed. May He enlarge your territory. May He order your steps. May He prosper your business, right? May He keep you from evil, and may He keep evil from you, because we know it's ugly out there. But most of all, may God bless you, and we'll see you next week. Thanks again for joining. We'll see you later.
God
Good
bless.
night, everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Good night, everyone.